Hello, it's Harper and welcome to Pages and Reels. Today I am going to discuss the 1982 movie adaptation of Agatha Christie's novel Evil Under the Sun, starring Peter Ustinov as Poirot. Just a word of warning, as someone who has read the novel, it is difficult for me to know what the movie is like for someone who has only watched the movie without any knowledge of the novel. I do know movies can still have merit even if they don't stay faithful to the original story, but for me, my default will be continuously comparing it to the novel. Also, massive spoiler alert for both the novel and movie. Let me just be honest and say I don't like Peter Ustinov as Poirot, and this is beyond him just not looking like Poirot. Ustinov plays Poirot like a buffoon to me, and he is not at all how I imagine Poirot to be. It's true that I feel like David Suchet is the ultimate Poirot and no one can ever come close to matching his version, but even taking Suchet out of the equation, there is something in Ustinov's interpretation that makes me feel uncomfortable. Something is missing that I can't quite put my finger on. A self-awareness, maybe? But it's difficult to believe that Poirot is intelligent in this movie. I know Ustinov was a well-respected actor who was much beloved in his time, and he is even now, so I am only judging him based on this movie, as I haven't seen him in anything else. I'm sure he is amazing in other movies. So, back to the movie. There were many changes made from the original story, so I will only discuss the ones that I feel were significant. Unlike the novel, Poirot does not go on holiday to the sea, but is commissioned by Horace Blatt to investigate a woman who duped him into a love scam. This woman turns out to be Alina, so completely different from the novel. This may sound a bit weird, but I found it in poor taste when the audience are shown scenes where Poirot is directly paid for his services and there's money flying around like some crass business deal. I don't know why, but it really bothered me. You do get a feeling in the books that Poirot is wealthy, but to me, Poirot seemed like someone who was always discreet about money, and he wasn't a mercenary. So even though, of course, money would have been involved, I felt like showing it in the way the movie did went against the spirit of who Poirot was. Maybe that makes no sense, but that's how I felt watching those scenes. The movie also changed the location of the story to an island somewhere in the Adriatic Sea. And the hotel is no longer called Sandy Cove Hotel. It is run by a lady named Daphne Castle, played by the late, great Dame Maggie Smith, who plays a much more central role in the story, and is also shown to have history with Alina, which is a source of tension between the two. I felt like I was watching a soap opera the way the two were constantly sparring with one another. The personality of a few of the characters were greatly changed as well. I'd always imagined Christine Redfern to be meek, soft-spoken and fragile when she and Patrick are performing their ruse as a troubled married couple. But in this movie, she just acts like a nag with a sour tongue. The ITV version of Evil Under the Sun was much more aligned with my idea of Christine Redfern. In the books, Alina is never directly unkind to Linda, just negligent. But in the movie, she's openly hostile to the young girl and acts like a bully. Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner are not the comical and good-natured American couple illustrated in the story, but financial investors who are bitter towards Alina for having walked out on a show that they had their money in. They tried to get her to star in another show but failed to do so. Maybe this storyline was added to the movie to give the Gardiners more of a motive to kill her. It was a shame though, because I thought the book Odell Gardiner was a really nice character, but in the movie they changed him into a seedy, money-grubbing ass. There's a new character in the movie called Rex, who kind of plays Alina's sassy gay frenemy, but he also has a motive to murder her because she refuses to endorse his book about her. The movie got rid of Simon Lane, Miss Brewster, and Rosamund Darnley from the books, and I feel like Daphne was the stand-in for Rosamund. If you've listened to my analysis of the novel Evil Under the Sun, you will know how much I dislike the character of Rosamund Darnley and Kenneth Marshall and their whole dynamic. But in this movie, the dynamic between Daphne Castle and Kenneth Marshall is actually very likable, especially because Daphne doesn't treat Kenneth like a victim, but an adult with agency who made a mistake in marrying the wrong woman, which she admits to. That was cool. Kenneth isn't portrayed as having a hero complex either, and the circumstances of his first marriage isn't disclosed, just that his first wife died. I know I've already mentioned this, but the movie really got Poirot wrong. For example, in the movie, Poirot happens to hear Patrick and Christine arguing in their rooms, and the real Poirot would have continued to listen because that's his nature, to snoop and eavesdrop. But in the movie, Poirot closes his window and stops listening. That's not Poirot. Something else I feel Agatha Christie would have been unhappy about also is that they changed the way the murder was carried out, and they definitely made it less feasible. I always thought that even the murder plot in the book was a bit tenuous, but the movie made it even weaker. Also, Christine Redfern is supposed to be cool, resourceful, but not violent in personality. But in this adaptation, she does engage in violence by attacking Alina with a rock. The whole murder plot in the movie was very fussy, overcomplicated, and kind of difficult to follow for me. I don't know if I missed some things, but there were also a few plot holes in the story which I couldn't be bothered in trying to figure out because it didn't really interest me. But the biggest plot hole that I noticed was that Horace Blatt admits to having met up with and argued with Alina as she waited for Patrick to meet her, and he threw the false diamond at her in rage. And that fell into the sand, and this is how Poirot knew Blatt had been there. But then in the flashback to the murder, the diamond drops as Alina is hit across the head by Christine and gets buried in the sand. So I don't really know what happened there. And also, how did Patrick steal the real diamond? I don't think any of that was really clearly explained. I'm sure you've caught on by now that I wasn't overly impressed with the movie. The cinematography was great, though, with the sweeping landscapes of the glittering ocean and cliffs. To me, that was the best bit, and maybe the music as well. It kind of reminded me of an epic. So was I too harsh on the movie? Maybe, but after watching David Suchet for so long, he is the mantle that I compare all Poirots to. Another thing I guess I should mention is that this movie is an older movie, so the pacing is much slower than what a contemporary audience might be used to. Older movies tend to be like that anyway. So I hope I haven't offended anyone too much with my commentary, as I am certainly not discouraging anyone from watching the movie. Until next time, bye!